Salutations, Imperial citizens and battle brothers. It's me, Brother Tobias, and I have attended another tournament, this time with a Stormlance task force. The Stormlance task force is a very mobile detachment and has recently been pioneered by the great John Lennon from Art of War. It is, in the opinion of some people, myself included, just a better Gladius, and I want to show you why. The detachment rule is Lightning Assault. Adeptus Astartes units from your army are eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which they advanced or fell back. This is basically just the same thing as the Assault Doctrine in the Gladius, but you get it for 5 full turns. And you also get half of the Tactical Doctrine at the same time. So the only rule you don't get from the detachment rule is fall back and shoot. But if you build your army around vehicles, which can shoot in combat, that isn't as much of a downside as you would first think. The enhancements in the Stormlance task force aren't that impactful. I myself don't take any of these, but if you want to take some of them, Fury of the Storm, which improves the strength and AP of a mounted character, goes pretty well on a bike chaplain. Same with Hunter's Instinct, which lets you rapid ingress or reserve a mounted chaplain with an outrider squad on turn 1. These two are at least interesting if you want to go for a bike chaplain hit squad. Fainting Withdrawal and Portents of Wisdom, which is reroll advances and falling back and shooting, isn't that impactful in my opinion, and unless you have a character without an enhancement, you can just save those points and spend them somewhere else. Let's go over the stratagems in the Stormlance task force. First is Armor of Contempt. Armor of Contempt, it's the same stratagem as always. It used to be better, but it's still really good at just saving a unit, especially if your opponent attacks you with low AP, high-ish damage weapons. Blitzing Fusillade gives assault to any Astartes unit, and it works great with Centurions, Aggressors, Brutalis Dreadnoughts, any of those units that are good in melee but also good in shooting. By using this stratagem, you never lose out on an activation by going for your advance and charge. Full Throttle is a 2 command point auto advance 6 or auto advance 9 on mounted units. While expensive at 2 CP, the cost is very manageable with the free stratagem abilities off of Roboute Guilliman or a Captain. This stratagem allows you to threaten really far, especially with Outriders. Me personally, I sometimes don't even charge when I use this. I use this just to get further up the board and contest an objective sometimes. Ride hard, ride fast makes the Stormraven gunship almost impossible to shoot and can save a speeder or outrider squad sometimes. -1 to hit and wound is a really noticeable buff. Shock Assault is nice to have, but not necessary with Oath of Moment. It gives a unit +1 to wound and reroll charges, which isn't bad at all, but I usually don't have a need for it. Windswift Evasion is a flat 6 reactive move on any unit. This is flat out better than the Gladius, because it works on Guilliman, it works on vehicles, and you never have to roll for it. It is always a 6-inch move. You can even use it to embark into the Stormraven. Let's go over the list. We are running Roboute Guilliman and Marneus Calgar. Just like the Gladius list we did a while ago, we are using both of these characters to generate a lot of advantage in the command point economy. We are using these command points to redraw every secondary card we cannot score. Calgar is accompanied by a unit of company heroes, and our skirmish pieces include 5 intercessors to sticky objectives, 5 incursors to scout up the board and threaten vehicles with the Haywire Mine, 5 scouts to score area denial and die, and sometimes even do other stuff. 5 infiltrators to prevent your opponent from deep striking closer than 12 inches, 3 Outriders to make use of the movement shenanigans to slingshot up the board, 3 Assault Centurions as a very hard-hitting melee anti-tank unit with anti-tank shooting and 18 anti-infantry shots. Their 4-inch movement characteristic is really supported by the Stormraven transport and the Auto 6 advance. 2 Ballistas Dreadnoughts to shoot long-range anti-tank shots, which are supported by 2 Stormspeeder Hammer Strikes, which strip cover in order to get the AP free of the Ballistas to do work. And finally, we have the Stormraven gunship, our centerpiece. The Stormraven comes equipped with a variety of twin-linked weapons and the hover keyword. That means it doesn't have to play the game as an aircraft piece, it is just a big flying vehicle. It is really difficult to destroy with -1 to hit, -1 to wound, and its innate -1 damage ability. But how did this army perform at the tournament? Let's take a look. Round 1 against Chaos Demons in the Plague Legion. This Nurgle-only army was really annoying to play against. The whole gimmick of this detachment is to hand your opponent battle shocks. I had to take up to 4 battle shocks within the same battle round. It was absurd. The idea is to debuff your leadership, deal mortal wounds to you by failing, and make sure you never score any primaries with your battle shock units trying to beat the Plague Bearers and Great Unclean Ones on the objectives. The +1 to wound on Oath of Moment did a lot of work here and helped my bolters to do damage to the Great Unclean Ones and ripped them off the table surprisingly fast. I spent all 5 turns of the game in Gilliman's Aura to hold objectives through the Battle Shock test by giving every unit within 6 inches +1 leadership and OC. That means even if I fail my now back to 6 leadership, I still have 1 point of OC if I fail the Battle Shock. I managed to win the game with a really low score thanks to all the Battle Shocks. However, I managed to push the demons even lower than that, and we have an Ultramarine victory. Round 2 was fought against Chaos Space Marines in the Packbound Zealot Detachment. It was your classic Chaos Space Marine army with 2 Vindicators, a bunch of Warp Talons, and Rhinos full of angry lords with Chosen attached to them. I used the Stormraven initially to kill most of the cheap scoring pieces to force my opponent to expose the tough scoring pieces. I launched an early turn 2 assault on the enemy home objective with my Assault Centurions dropping out of the Stormraven. I baited the Chosen and Lords out with my Scouts because I did move block the Legionaries in the other Rhino with my Outriders. That allowed me to trade for one of the Chosen packages with Calgar, and then avoid getting taken back by putting Calgar back into the Stormraven with a reactive move. The game ended in a very decisive victory lap, and I managed to go 2-0 so far. The last game of the day, I faced the Adeptus Custodes in the Solar Spearhead in the hands of a very high-ranked and very skilled opponent. Said opponent brought a stat check of an army full of durable hulls. My only advantages here, I get to go second on Scorched Earth for the burns, and I think I brought enough damage to get past those stat checks. In the early game, I used my cheap resources to tie the primary early and block the Wardens into their corner to delay them as long as possible. I got to launch an assault on the left flank with Gilliman to kill a bunch of Dreadnoughts in combat, supported by Calgar, of course. The Stormraven did some truly horrific damage runs and was a really painful nuisance, dropping my Assault Centurions into the center, staging them up for a future charge, and dropping the Ballistas Dreadnoughts into perfect firing lanes. The game goes back and forth with really tough secondary draws. My opponent manages to bounce back with a turn 5 Overwatch, killing Gilliman for Assassinate and denying me the Marked for Death 2, which was a 10-point swing. I do, however, still win the game by 2 points in total, giving me a really close finish and winning the Ultramarines the 3rd game. With that, I can happily report to have finished as one of 3 undefeated players of the day and walked home with my 3rd place trophy and coupon. This list is really fun and I would recommend you try this detachment. As I said earlier, I do think the Stormlance is just better than the Gladius, because the latter's ranged support has gotten nerfed so much that I would rather have the upgraded charge and reactive moves. If you want to see more detachment videos and tournament reports, please come back for more. And join the Ultramarine Discord, the Realm of Ultramar. Link in the description. Courage and honor, we march for McCrag.